Okay, this is my famous Think Differently t-shirt, and my hat is the Red Cross. Okay, so, let's see. To begin with, we're going to talk about less you and more. What does that mean? Well, first I got to fix my hair. I mean, everyone knows it. I got hat head, terrible. I'm going to put the hat on. Look at how brutal this is. Once you start wearing a hat, you have to keep wearing it until you wash your hair and try it again. If you were going to go to now that you have seen, what I do is I start off on my rant and then I go and shift into neutral, and I'm in neutral. What gear do I want to pick? This is an old manual car, manual transmission with a stick shift. What gear am I going to pick? Well, as a driver of a manual car, I'm going to look at my velocity. What is my current velocity? If I'm doing 35 miles an hour, I'm not going to shift into first gear. And at 35 miles an hour, I'm not going to shift into fifth gear. So you have to know where you are, and in a car, knowing where you are also implies how fast are you going, because that's how you determine which gear is going to be suitable. You might have a choice of one that's going to be revving your engine a little bit faster, or one a little bit slower, but you're going to have a pick of two. And if you're planning on passing someone, you're going to want the one that revs the engine a little bit faster because you're going to get better acceleration. But if you're coming to coast, you've already hit the speed that you want to go at, then the higher gear is going to give you better fuel economy. So, with this example in mind, what am I going to do with it? Okay, so this is either the flag of Switzerland or the Red Cross, who are there, with their first aiders. Well, think differently implies that you're thinking one way and it's time to shift out of the way you're thinking. So, an analysis from Mr. Spock of Star Trek is going to be, how are we thinking now, Spock? We've got a command from Starfleet Command that says we must think differently. So how are we thinking now? We've got to know what we've been doing so far in order to do something different. So you don't do something different until you figure out what you're doing right now. And what happens is, well, you go into your bag of thinkings and you say, well, you can think in A, B, or C ways, and Mr. Innovation over there says, no, there's a D option, but we don't know what it is. We have to do some innovating to get to the D option. And, maybe there's more than one innovation, so there could be an E and an F type of choices of thinking differently. But I would say if your box is A, B, and C, and you're saying think differently, and all you're doing is moving A, B, C around, it's a shell game, and you're not thinking differently. You're not. You need to do innovation. How do you innovate when it comes to thinking? Well, I already told you Mr. Spock has been assigned to look at the way you've been thinking to this point. So Mr. Spock is going to look at thinking A, thinking B, and thinking C, and we'll come up with an analysis of what those modes of thinking are. So you'll know what those choices are. And then to innovate, you're going to have a research department, and they might spend a lot of time going through obscure sources of fringe science, or perhaps they'd be reviewing science fiction or oddball things. So they're trying to get inspired by people who are very unconventional. So once they get into the unconventional frame of mind, they would also be told to drop judgment. This is the very big first hurdle in the art of innovation, is recognizing that judgment will step in, and before you even looked at something, it will say it can't be done. Or it was looked at before and it was thrown away, so don't go there. So if you're going to be in an innovative frame of mind, you have to throw away judgment. And you have to allow the creative juices to flow. So you can't be just saying no, 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 no. So the no has to be thrown away. I was going to say, you mean, I keep it in your back pocket because maybe after so many hours you're going to say no. But Thomas Edison, and discovering the filament for the incandescent bulb, I can't remember if it was 1,000 different filaments that he tried before he found one that worked. So when are you going to find the one that works? If you have a no in your back pocket and you say, well, we're only going to assign you, 3 hours for this task, and if at the end of 3 hours you don't have the filament that works for your incandescent bulb, well, you've just thrown a monkey wrench into your innovation. So this is the research and development R&D arm of your business, without which you are relying on old products. So in business school, these ones are hopefully what they call cash cows. Is it possible that some things cannot be improved? Yes. Scotch whiskey. Coca-Cola. Now, Coca-Cola is a great example because the Coca-Cola company, at one point, you can go and do your research, but look up New Coke. where they decided to change the formulation of Coke because they were worried that Pepsi was going to take their market share away because it was sweeter than Coke. And there was a whole long process where they came up with new Coke, and then they had to bring back original Coke because some of their customers didn't like new Coke and they were very annoyed. So they brought back classic Coke, and in the end, no one sees new Coke anymore. We're back to Coca-Cola. So these are classics, and Scotch whiskey is the same way. You don't screw with Scotch whiskey. Then it's not going to be Scotch. It's made the old-fashioned way. And really good Scotch whiskey is labor-intensive. It's not made in it's made in small stills, in the batch method. And maybe that's why it's so expensive, but that's why it's good Scotch. And, if you're going to mass produce good Scotch, people are going to go looking around for someone who makes it in small batches because it's going to be, in their opinion, more authentic Scotch. So, are you going to innovate with Scotch? Well, you could innovate with the packaging of your Scotch, okay? So, it's not like you don't have anything new. So, this is my bottle of Scotch. It's the famous Grouse, and this bottle has been around for a long time. Okay, and you can see up here, this is by appointment to Her Majesty the Queen. Does that mean the Queen drinks it? No, it means that the palace licenses this appointment thing and gets money from the company for the company to put Her Majesty's it's not a trademark, I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, the packaging is a bottle. It's got this metallic top. I imagine before they had metallic tops, maybe they were using cork, putting a cork into a glass bottle. It was established in 1800. So, I don't know. Did they have metal tops like this in 1800? Well, this one was mass-produced. So something has changed in the packaging. Did they always have this lettering and this symbol of the grouse? I don't know. You have to do your history. But the point of it is even if you don't change the actual Scotch, you might change the way that it's delivered. Some booze you can get in plastic bottles. As a traditionalist, I prefer the glass to plastic. Maybe it's too many stories about things in the plastic leaching into the liquid. But even when it comes to glass, I've got these beautiful decanters for booze. Okay? This is lead crystal. As you can see, there's no booze in it. Because the story is if you put liquids in these things, the lead will leach out into your liquid and then you'll be drinking poisonous lead. What a shame. Now, my thought is maybe what you would do is if you were going to have a cocktail party and you wanted to use the lead crystal, pour the booze in, and at the end of your bar night, you empty the booze out of it, either into your gullet or back into the bottle using a funnel. so it's not sitting for great lengths of time in the lead crystal. But it's a bloody shame that lead crystal cannot be used for the purpose it was given, so now it becomes anyway, the innovation is the new glass that it's packaged in, which I must assume is not lead crystal. It's another form of glass without lead in it, although I don't know for sure what kind of glass it is. I mean, if you were looking for problematic areas, maybe you would call the manufacturer of bottles for famous grouse and say, the glass you're using, it's not lead, is it? What's the glass made of? Does it have, then I'll go and look to see if any of these things are toxic or going to leach into the booze. But generally speaking, my great big assumption is that the glass that's being used for that Scotch bottle is not lead crystal and is not poisoning the Scotch the way that decanter might. How long does it take for the lead in a lead crystal to leach out into the liquid that's in the decanter? I don't know. If you're a heavy Scotch drinker and you're going through a bottle of Scotch a week, is it going to be an issue? Or if your Scotch is going to sit there for 5 years, then maybe it's more of an issue. But you're constantly putting fresh Scotch in there. Well, the same amount of lead is going to leach out into your Scotch if you keep pouring new bottles in one a week, or if one bottle sits in there for 5 years. Over 5 years, the same amount of lead is going to leach out into that liquid as long as the liquid's at the same level in your decanter. That only makes logical sense. So, if you're using lead crystal permanently, look up the studies to see how much lead is going to leach into you. And then, if you get lead poisoning, how much lead can you take in without getting lead poisoning? Well, you could take activated charcoal or EDTA and see if you can flush it out. So anyway, the point was that innovation doesn't actually have to be with, the products that you're buying as Scotch, but you're also buying the brand. And with the brand is the reputation of the Scotch, which might be from word of mouth from other people or from your local bartender, or for something you saw on a TV show where they were drinking that particular brand. And, that which gives you no idea of, was it cheap Scotch? Was it like middle of the road Scotch? Or was it like high end? Or was it like something that only the Rockefellers could afford? And, the packaging, is it, when you go to the liquor store and you don't really care, you've got several different ones, is it an eye-catching thing that's going to sway you to buy the famous grouse versus the Queen Anne? Is it the percentage of alcohol? If this one's 40% and another one's 50%, is that going to make a difference to you? All these things come into the brand. And, does one brand of Scotch taste the same as another? No, they don't. They don't. They taste different. So brand is important. It's like, does Coke taste like Pepsi? Well, they're both colas, but do they taste the same? No. That is basically your lecture, and I don't really know how to go on about innovation with these old cash cow products. But if you were going to invent a new product to compete with Scotch whiskey, well, is it going to be an alcoholic product? Let's say yes. Is it going to be based on a grain? Okay, and is it going to have a flavoring agent like peat? Not necessarily. Well, then you've got all kinds of different whiskeys, like corn whiskey, like bourbon, um, Canadian rye whiskey. So, there's various things. And if you don't want whiskey, then you can go to like your vodkas. But if you wanted to have a brand new kind of booze, well, dandelion wine has already been invented. But if you distilled dandelion wine and you took the high alcohol distillate and you gave it a name like Gaston Gingras, then you've got a new product. It's made from dandelions and it's a booze and it's at 40% alcohol and it has a different taste. Like gin is flavored with juniper berries. So all these boozes have got different tastes, and if you want to innovate, then you need a new taste. I'm reminded of Star-Kissed tuna, which was a brand that is no longer sold. It was Charlie Tuna was a cartoon character in the commercial. And what did Charlie Tuna said? You're not looking for tuna with good taste. You're looking for tuna that tastes good. It turned out there was a great scandal because the government of Canada allowed Star-Kissed to sell tainted tuna. Tuna that was basically classified as fit for cat food but not human consumption. But Star-Kissed leaned on the Minister of Fisheries somehow, and the minister ordered the fishery department to allow it to be used for fish. The information got out, and the tainted tuna scandal, I think it caused Star-Kissed, the company, to fail, no longer around, unless they took the factory and put a new name on it. But you don't see Star-Kissed tuna anymore. It's too bad, because Charlie Tuna was very cute, and he had good taste. Maybe he was drinking high-end scotch or something. Anyway, that was the story of tainted tuna and thinking differently. That's all I got for you. I'm Harry Weaver, your narrator.